I feel like I'm detaching. I'm doing my own stuff. I'm feeling confident about myself, but my wife's attitude is getting even worse. Welcome to this live tribe call today, guys. We've been hosting these calls since the beginning of the pandemic because men feel alone, not only in the pandemic, but all the time, right? Men feel alone in this challenge. And so we've been hosting these calls for a long time now, for years now. And our topic today, I'm detaching, but my wife's attitude is getting even worse, is one that my clients ask me all the time. Hey, is this supposed to be getting worse before it gets better? Or why does she seem to be treating me maybe even more badly now? I'm feeling really good about myself. I'm kicking ass at work. I'm being the father that I want to be. I'm being the man I want to be. I'm getting in shape, but it seems like this is actually rubbing her the wrong way. Or is this going in the wrong direction? So I'd love for you guys here to come in and tell some of this story. How can you relate to this? I'm detaching. My wife's attitude is getting even worse. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Jeff. It's really, I think when I've done a lot of the self-reflection, I thought I was detaching, but I really wasn't detaching. So the pressure she was still feeling was creating that, the way she was feeling and her emotions was much more cold and distant. And, like we've talked about on the various calls, I think they have a superpower where they can pick up on these things. So, I felt like I was really detaching, but, in my mind, I don't really believe I had completely just kind of let go and dropped the rope. I was saying it to maybe think I was doing it, but things got way better over the past, like right after July of this year. And I mean, now I'm genuinely detached, and really anything she does, it's like, well, whatever, that's not me. And those are her thoughts and her actions. And, I have mine.
Sure. Yeah. So what's helped you with that? What happened in July or since then? I mean, imagine a man has just begun this. This is the first video, or he's been reading one book so far, and he's thinking, hell, how to do that? What would you say?
Well, I took a couple of courses through Good Guys to Great Men with Garrett and Mark Dreska. And really, a lot of it's the reading. And the more that you read about these things, and sometimes it took me more than, one go through on the book to
Yeah.
really kind of get the concept. That helped out a lot. But then just realizing, I think one of the most powerful ones is Inside Out Revolution.
Oh, sure. By Michael
And
Neal, right? Is
yeah,
that right? Michael Neal.
yeah, yeah. That one really helped out a lot. Plus, working on my, nuts, values, boundaries with Mark and Garrett. And, funny enough, when I initially started that process, I felt like I was going to be graded on it. Like I wasn't getting something right. Like, oh
Sure.
no, that can't be it. That's not one. Or, somebody was going to tell me I was wrong. But when I finally just kind of let go of it and was like, well, this is for me, this is nobody else. And I decide, how I'm going to go about living my life. And once that set in and everything else, but I mean, we're like 18 months down the road, over a year separated. So the distance is like the pressure's off, man. I can just I'm living. So it's nice.
Yeah, sure. Good for you. So
Sure.
when your wife's attitude is getting even worse, what have you seen where she sort of what is she doing that you've had a challenge of still being your own man, still walking your own path in the face of that behavior?
I think the turning off the affection and I guess love or whatever it was we once had was the most difficult part for me to accept. And when somebody is cold and distant to you, it feels hurtful. And I think that was most of it because there isn't so much of the snarky comments or digs or whatever, and it was basically, I think there was a lack of respect there that really kind of agitated me a lot, where I wasn't feeling, and then of course, as a man, I demand your respect. You must give it to me, type
Right.
of thing.
Yeah.
That shit doesn't work. So,
Right.
um,
Yeah, it's painful.
it
It's
is what
painful
it
when she
is.
backs away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's painful when she backs away, when she
Yeah.
doesn't want to be close with us or feel close with us. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate you getting us started, man. Good to see
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Come on in. How can you relate?
Hey,
How can you relate to this topic? Good to see you.
yeah, good to see you. A few different things. One is I've come to try to realize this from a larger perspective. I think it's very common to get stuck in our certain myopic ways of seeing things. And so for me, trying to get a broader perspective as I'm going to have a different awareness of my detachment versus her and dynamics that we built up. I've been married 33 years, so it's been a long time. We've been through a lot of different changes and challenges and all sorts of stuff, and have been separated to one degree or another over the course of the last about year. She's spending about 4 days at home right now, but even just last night told me, that the detachment that I think I've been doing really well at still seems overbearing to her. And so I recognize that you build up a dynamic over time, and as you start to change it, that doesn't necessarily mean that your wife is going to recognize that or see that in the same way. So I have a different kind of scorecard for myself, and part of that detachment is being able to say, okay, well, I'm taking that input. I appreciate, you saying that, but not necessarily allowing that to be, the grade that I'm going with.
Sure, you want to look at your own scoreboard.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and so that detachment, if I were to look at it, I had some pretty significant, insecure attachment style. She was in an accident 3.5 years ago, almost died, and I found myself going from kind of a secure attachment style through most of our marriage to a really insecure one, due to nearly losing her and all of that, and then kind of the problems came out of that. And there's just a lot of different factors. And so what I've really tried to do with my own detachment is, that whole concept that we talk about of dropping the rope and not being in that space. I'm also realizing that there's a lot within my own heart, and this comes down to some of the nuts determination and all of this and such that, I want to be in a relationship and I want our relationship to have, a degree of connection and affection. And we just have vastly different standards on that. I'm a much more affectionate person. She's much less so. A lot of family history stuff with that. But by and large, the way I can identify with the topic and why I said I gotta be here today is that difference in the standard. What feels like detachment for me and feels like I've given up a lot to her, that dynamic is still kind of tough for her.
Yeah, so
And
let me jump in.
yeah,
Give me a specific that we can bounce off of throughout the call. So, well, first of all, I'm wondering, did you go to her and say, "Hey, we've been taking space, and how's this feeling for you?" Or how do you know that she doesn't appreciate the detachment or the space as much as you are? How do you know? What do you see?
well, what happened last night in particular is that we were, having a discussion, and I made a comment where I was like, well, things are, I kind of make a status report from my own perspective and said, things are very different. I'm not, as into your schedule or where you're at or who you're hanging with or whatever the case is. And she's like, oh, I still feel that you are. And I was like, really? Okay, that's strange. And so again, that discrepancy came up in conversation. And one thing that I've gotten a lot better at is not being triggered by that difference in opinion. And before it'd be like, well, wait a second, that's, I would kind of jump in and have
Sure.
to justify my position.
Right.
And now it's more like okay, guess we're seeing that differently. And not feeling that urge to justify myself or make her understand the way that I feel about it or whatever. It's just like, so that's part of how I continue the detachment. And so it wasn't that I inquired so much about it. I just kind of made a statement about it, and then she said, "That's I'm still feeling this or that or whatever."
Gotcha. Okay. So let me ask what might be your question about the difference in standard? If you had a specific question about what her point of view or how you're approaching this. You said there's a difference in standard between the two of you. What would be your
Yeah,
question?
what I mean by is what feels like good work on my detachment side of things, where let's say I went from, 100% attachment and needing to know where she was and who she was with and how that was all working and stuff. I'm down to maybe like a 30-40%. And so I see in my own behavior and the way I'm responding to things, a 70% improvement. For her, that different standard is he's still doing it. And so for her, the movement wasn't as great. And so that's, so I don't really have a specific question about it. It's just an observation that how somebody perceives what you're doing is going to always be different perspective, but you need to not even be attached to that difference in perspective. And that,
Sure. Yeah, that's good. So that's awareness on your part that yeah, and we'll talk about that today. That's great. I appreciate it.
sure.
What is she thinking? How can I approach this in a different way, or how can I start to validate my own self even more? Because it depends on the woman, but
Oh yeah.
often she's wanting to feel completely unhooked from the trailer of relationship at times.
Right.
And for us, wanting to be in relationship, there is responsibility there. There does feel like some pressure there to be in relationship. That's a natural part of relationship. So yeah, we'll talk about that today. Good to see you.
Okay.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, coming in.
So you might know that I'm in a fairly long term now in-house separation. It's been 18 months, and we've had a number of intense discussions about what we're going to do. I mean, we're in an unusually expensive housing market. You can't buy a house here for less than about 1.3 million. And she wants to keep living like this for years. And I mean, for now, it's very comfortable because 90% of the time it's fine. But when I was going to talk about detachment in particular, the last time we had this discussion, I said, look, if we're going to do this, there's things I need. I need to be able to have people over. I'm not going to spend the next whatever. Not. And then I finally said to her, I need a woman's touch. And if it's not going to be you, it's going to be somebody else. And she wasn't too, I mean, she's like, I don't care what you do on your own time. I said, yeah, but if I go out on a Friday night, she's like, well, I'm not going to watch the kids. Wait, while you are wooing another woman. And I'm like, what? Am I going to get a babysitter and you're going to hang out in the living room with the babysitter and the kids? And she kind of realized that, no, that's not great. She's super uncomfortable with in any way facilitating this. Now, what does this have to do with detachment? I don't know. I feel like, at least in my case, I'm getting to the point where I'm like, yeah, I prefer to reestablish a connection with her. But you know what? I'm ready to move on if she's just going to keep her walls up. Even if I don't know how that would work if we're still cohabitating. I have no idea. That has to be figured out. It's interesting because we had this long conversation on Friday morning, and I came out of it feeling okay. It was hard. She had a shrink appointment immediately afterwards, so I thought, oh, good, she'll get to manage. I came home around 4 o'clock. She was in a completely depressed, low affect, totally grunting any answer to any question I gave.
Yeah, sounds fun. Yeah.
You know what I did? Now this, I'm going to admit it. I do a bit of fake it until I make it. I was just super cheerful, engaging with the kids. I didn't engage with her much because it was always a complete fucking disaster. And then this morning, wake up, same thing. Hey, how you doing? I was like, fine. I went out for a walk. I called a buddy who's going through the same thing. We chatted a bit. It's hard to maintain. I hate to admit it. There's a bit of fake it till you make it. Maybe everyone does this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so our bullet points of today, what is healthy detachment? How to be peaceful even if she's upset, and why this is likely just a phase for her. So let me ask you about number two, how to be peaceful even if she's upset. That's what I'm hearing you're talking about is,
Yeah.
okay, I'm deciding really what I want in life. And if she's going to stay stuck, I have to decide to step forward in some capacity in some way.
Yeah.
So how do you stay peaceful even if she's upset?
I just say to myself, like, I take a lot of lessons from you and from the Good Guys to Good Men group. This isn't about me. I'm fine and I'm going to be okay. Because I don't know what we're going to do in the future, but I make enough money. Maybe I'll never own a house again. But lots of people go through their lives without ever owning a house. I mean, my standard of living will come down the only way to keep it up is to stay in this weird arrangement. And I guess I'm just like really focusing on, I'm going to be okay. The kids, it's going to be fucking hard for them. But, they'll be okay too. She'll be okay too. We're all going to be okay. That's what I keep focusing on. We're all going to be okay, no matter how this journey ends. And I guess that's what I keep kind of coming back to. It's kind of a mantra,
Yeah, good for you. What I had to learn through this work, and I've been doing self work for about 15 years, something like that. And what I had to learn and took time was what you just said, that I know that I'm going to be okay no matter what, that I'm confident that I'm going to take a step forward in the best direction I can, no matter what I'm facing in life. that is groundedness. That is spiritual confidence. That is the masculine grounding that we strive for, that we want to feel, let's say, clear about our own selves. I'm seeing that in you. And yes, it does come with some fake it till you make it at
Yeah,
first, because
lots of fake it till you make it.
we have to try on a new hat if we've never worn that before. Absolutely.
Like I feel like I'm faking it all the time. I
Yeah.
don't mean this in a bad way. I just mean I feel like I'm not really feeling cheerful, but here goes. Hey,
Yeah,
how you
sure. So
doing?
that's a good
Like,
example. And you don't have to be cheerful, but to shift away from the negative is what I'm hearing. To shift away
yeah.
from the self-loathing, maybe. Well, how would you phrase that?
I never have self-loathing. That's never an issue.
Okay.
No self-loathing.
Good. Okay.
I think very
Yeah.
highly of myself.
So what's the most difficult spot? Is it when she's acting in a certain way that's the most difficult for you, or something within yourself?
Yeah, it's basically, we get look, this morning after the kids woke up, she cheered up and she and I just sat down and chatted about her work for an hour and a half. We very connected. It was not, it's like we could have been roommates. I mean, it wasn't, what's the most difficult spot? She's very volatile. And when she goes into a tailspin, it's hard. But I'm getting way better at it. I'm getting better at just sort of like, using the word detachment. I just pretend it's not, if it's really bad, I walk out, I walk out of the house. If it's really bad. But if it's just like this, I just like, oh, you be you and I'm going to be me. That's really hard, as you're perfectly aware, because you've dealt with thousands of men. But I think I'm finally getting to the point where I can at least fake it. I'm not saying I'm fully there. Well, I couldn't fake it a year
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
I couldn't even fake it a year ago.
Yeah, well,
So,
let me ask one thing for me, and let's say there's a man watching that has no idea how to even fake it. And so for me, what I had to do, my face used to get hot and I would hold my breath, right? And I wasn't even aware that I was holding my breath. My face would get hot, my head would get super tight. So part of the faking it till you make it for me was to breathe and shut up. To not talk right away. Right. So I always put my hand over my mouth when I'm showing you guys this stuff. Okay, breathe and be quiet. Breathe and be quiet. Let the heat dissipate, the heat in my face, relax my face. Don't scrunch my eyes at the person like I have laser beams coming out of. That's what I had to practice first. Do you have anything like that for you?
no, it's funny. It's kind of the opposite. It's like you're in your body. I think some people are in their bodies, which is good. I'm in my head. And so what I do is repeat shit to myself. Like, I'm going to be fine. Whatever happens, I'm going to be fine. In a year or two, I'm going to have a woman in my life. It might be her, it might be somebody else. So it's with me, it's more about repeating comforting thoughts
I
to
see.
myself.
Gotcha.
Or maybe I won't have it. Whatever I do, I'm going to have a good life. It's kind of shitty right now, but within a year or two, it's going to have sorted itself out.
Yeah, fantastic. Good stuff. Let me press pause on you. That's
That's good.
excellent.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah,
got to turn this
for
off
me, I
again.
get overwhelmed by body stuff. I don't. So,
Yeah.
and you guys that are all on your head, that's a great example. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. So, real quick, by the way, if you want to see more of my stuff, greatmenmovemountains.com. Check out my website. Detaching with love. So, what is healthy detachment? Detaching with love is good for everyone. Distancing yourself from other people's problems isn't selfish or cruel. You need to detach when you're so wrapped up in other people's pain and problems that it's negatively impacting your physical or emotional health. If you're not sleeping or eating normally, if you have headaches or stomach aches, tense, distracted, depressed, preoccupied, worried, then you need to detach in a healthy way. Detaching reminds us that we can control only ourselves. And when we focus on what we can control, we will begin to see positive results and our hope will be restored. Hope will be restored in that we can affect change in our life, focusing on what we can control and taking the next best step forward. Detaching is good for others as well. You may be wondering, isn't detaching mean or selfish? No, it isn't. We don't detach to punish others or because we're angry at them. Detachment is about self-preservation, and it's also a way to love others, even if they probably won't see it that way. If you're constantly hovering, worrying, telling them what to do, or rescuing them, they never have the opportunity to learn how to make decisions, solve their problems, and learn from their mistakes. If you do those things, you're creating dependency, which isn't helpful or kind. And that's what a lot of women want when they come to this place of, I want space, or I'm not sure that I'm in love with you, or I don't know about us. I don't feel positive about the future with us. Is many of them in the next breath say, I want to feel confident on my own. I want to be able to do life on my own. I felt like I lost myself in this marriage, a lot of women say. but then they fall into old habits of still wanting everything from you that they had in the marriage, but not wanting to give into the marriage, right? So there's this really these painful moments as a man when she seems to reach out, but doesn't want intimacy in the relationship. And when we start to detach and take a step back from giving as the husband that we always were because it's no longer appropriate, then she gets upset and we see different behaviors. And that's a big piece of what we're talking about today is when she gets angry or upset, when we take a healthy step back, what do we do? Or let's talk about that. That's what we're talking about today. How can you relate to this topic today?
I don't want to backtrack too
Yeah,
much,
go
but I
back,
did want
please.
to
Yeah,
say,
go for it.
all right, about the fake it till you make it thing. I felt that a lot especially when I was going through the real thick of it. And as that mindset has evolved, Jeff, you touched on it. I wanted to circle back and really hammer the point home that maybe it's not faking it completely because when I was thinking I was faking it, it felt inauthentic. I was a phony. I was a fraud. Instead, it's practicing a new skill. It's not so much faking it so much as you're learning something new and you're not going to be great at it right away.
Yeah, that's very well
That's
said. So how did you make that shift for you? Like, make it real to a man that's brand new here. What did you go through?
hearing it logically first, just like that. And then it took some time. It took some, oh, all right, so this is practicing a new skill, like riding a bike. All right, she's attacking, and I'm going to take that deep breath, and I'm not going to react, and I'm going to consider what she's saying, and maybe I'm not even going to respond. Maybe I'm going to respond much less aggressively than I used to. That's step one. And you've heard, Steve's 4 steps of unconscious, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, the stages of learning,
Going,
right? We have to be
yeah.
aware of it first. Yeah.
So yeah, going through that and realizing the first time it does feel like a fraud. It does feel like a phony. And then the second time is, well, wait a minute, this is a new skill, and then kind of getting into it. So I'll get back to the bike ride, but I wanted to chime in.
Yeah, that's fair. I love it. It's a new skill that I'm learning. It's like a new sport. It's gonna feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable at first. I'm gonna be sore. I'm gonna get bruises and scrapes, but this is a new sport that I want to learn how to play, right? Yeah. Thanks. Good to see you. You put in the chat. Yeah, seems weird to detach from some channels, but not detach from others. Like detach from emotional intimacy, but not from paying rent, not from paying the bills. Yeah, come say more about that and tell us about your spot there. How are you in that spot?
I guess my wife has said that she feels like the romantic part of our relationship is over for her, and maybe let's work on being co-parents, and maybe we can develop a friendship, and maybe something will happen. But so there's sort of wanting to kind of respect her desire for that, and then also kind of navigate that. I guess for me, for my situation now, we have a daughter. She's nearly 3. So it's like co-parenting with that. And I guess I was telling you like I'm in another country now. So it's this weird thing where like I'm here and currently the situation is they're under accompanying family member visas. So it's like I can't just like move out without them
Right.
being able to stay there. So it's sort of like I need to kind of think of a long game here, but and like detach in some ways, but still kind of always kind of definitely have her back in certain ways and have the back of the family. And so it just sort of being able to kind of navigate that is just I'm sort of at the beginning of that journey, really. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So take me into the moment. So in the moment she says, I want to be co-parents, and if something happens down the road, great. In that moment, are you just taken aback? Are you blown off your feet? Where are you within that emotionally right now?
Well, I think at first for a while I was unable to kind of detach internally and kind of keep walking around the house and sort of shut that part of myself off. So for about a couple of months now, I've actually rented a room in a different city, and I'm doing that. And so the physical space is kind of helping me, and I'm sort of positioning it as maybe a healing separation. I don't know if she thinks of it that way or a trial, but that's sort of helping me a little bit. But it feels like I'm not confronting. I feel like almost like it would be cool if I could just be in the home and not make it complicated seeing my daughter and stuff, and just being able to show up for myself. I don't know. So right now the feeling isn't isn't so much, but I'm not sure it's as much really intentional detaching in a very focused way as much as maybe like successfully numbing myself a
Hmm.
little bit with some distance and like limiting the times of interaction. Yeah, I'm definitely still in it. I haven't figured anything out with
Yeah,
this.
that makes sense. So if I can ask, what's happened between you and your wife? Has this been just a slow moving apart from one another, losing each other, not keeping up, seeing dating each other and being intimate, and or has something major happened? Take me into that.
Well, sure. I mean, I think for me, what it's been is we tried for a child. She got pregnant, and so it's been about 3 years with zero intimacy at all. And I think she's just sort of really dived into kind of like, I'm a mother. This is number one, and that kind of shocked me. And I've sort of it's been sort of a long road of kind of being patient and figuring like, okay, maybe after a little bit of postpartum, etc. But so it's really just sort of been this slow burn for a few years now. Um, and I mean, we haven't been married that long. We celebrated our fifth anniversary, but about three of it has been just nothing. And I've been increasingly wanting intimacy, been very needy hummingbirdie, and learning all these things like, oh wow, yeah, I was definitely that. And it's just sort of gotten to kind of a breaking point for me where I said like, you seem comfortable with not doing anything right away. Like you don't want a divorce or anything. It seems like you'd be comfortable just doing this without any intimacy for years or whatever. And maybe one day you want to go. And so I decided some action is better than no action, and I moved out for a separation after seeing a lot of videos. But so it's really sort of been like that. It's sort of been like feel like I've been trying, asking, and it feels like sort of been talking to a wall and just someone who's just kind of shut down on me.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let me ask, there's many pieces to this work, of course.
Yeah,
There's you as a man, regardless of anyone else. There's the
yeah,
relationship together. There's your wife. And often with your wife, from I've seen doing this many years, is the parts of her identity. So how she sees herself as a woman in the world, how she makes money, and as a mother. And some women either at this phase of life or their entire life, they've been putting all the chips into the pot of, I want to be a mother. And when they become a mother, that's what their world is encompassed by, is being a mom. And it pushes out almost everything else, including intimacy or their own self-care as well. Those things, just like often for us, we go work and lose ourselves, our own self-care, but we still want intimacy. And for her, her own self-care and intimacy just gets shoved right off the page real fast. And you're nodding when I'm saying this, since it's like her whole life becomes as the identity of a mother. So she's no longer a lover. Yeah. Is that
yeah.
you're nodding? Yeah.
Well, because yeah, one of my big things is I feel like I've been diving into rescue mode. I feel like I've been in a like she's refused daycare and babysitting, and there are all these things where I'm like, this is way too much for you. You don't have time for yourself, much less our relationship. And I think she just resisted that. So like I've been aware of like, oh, she could really help, and it was kind of like, I love this woman, and sort of not being able to kind of have her take care of herself was just weird. Um, so
Yeah. So let me ask, now that you've taken space, which is not a bad thing in your spot, because and I'll say this in a healthy way, you wanted to feel a bit
yeah,
of your absence. If she has no interest or if she's not putting any effort into your relationship, and I'll just say it that black and white way for the sake of this conversation right now.
yeah,
If she's not putting any effort into the relationship, well, that's not okay with you. And so you take a healthy step back so that she has a chance to miss you, a chance to miss the relationship. Now, if she doesn't care, then you have to make a decision.
yeah,
But what are you seeing otherwise? So this is where, if this might be the edge of your work, is why I'm taking you there. If she doesn't care, that's one thing. If she does though care, if she does want to be around you and have the relationship in some capacity, then that's a different thing. So where do you feel that it is right now? Does she reach out to you? Does she have any interest in connecting with you?
No, she doesn't. I mean, she'll sort of reach out to me and say that I should, be spending more time with my daughter or this and that, which is strange because I'm trying to navigate not being around my wife as much. But it's pretty much just that interest. It really doesn't feel like any kind of interest in me. And like she's trying to discover herself again. Like she talks about like, oh, there's this concert I might want to go to. Can you watch that night? My daughter. So yeah, it doesn't feel like there's any kind of interest.
She might not have any right now. So
It
if
might
that
not.
were the
Yeah.
case, yeah, what would that mean for you for the next 3 months or 6 months, for instance, if she didn't have any interest and you were fulfilling your own life and sort of living as if you weren't in a relationship with her right now and seeing your daughter, what would that look like for you or mean for you?
I think that could mean something. Like I could sort of, rediscover parts of myself and pursue them that I did before. I was just 80% of the time working and the other 80% of the time in my marriage. Wait, that's over 100%. And just trying to do that. And I guess because what I'm doing now in terms of like the channel is I still feel like a responsibility of kind of having things taken care of there. I mean, I guess the thing for me partially is I'm also starting a company, so income's sort of variable, and I can kind of like choose that. And she's so far been really good with being a stay-at-home mom for a while. So it's sort of like I could possibly make decisions that would sort of turn the crank on maybe what she's been able to do, and I don't want that to seem spiteful or resentful, and I don't want it to impact my daughter. And so there's sort of like a sense of like, oh, I think I can do my own thing, but I definitely still need to earn way more than I need for myself, and then avoid conflict that way.
Right. That makes sense. So in my opinion, my professional opinion, we don't want to turn the crank too fast. That's what you're saying, because that can be spiteful. That can be manipulative. It's not what we're wanting. But the step back goes something that it has to be values based, meaning what's the higher good here? So I'm going to, you are, I'm taking space because I want you, sweetheart. I want you, my love, to find your heart again, to find your soul for who you are. I want you to find you, and I want you to find the part of you that wants to be in relationship with me. That's why I'm doing this. That's why we're doing this. Is I'm happy to step back, and I'm happy for you to find your own self again. And yes, I want to see our daughter regardless. And I want to do all this so that you can find energy for yourself and for us again. It's not just, okay, I'm going to disappear now, to your point. This is the higher good of why I'm doing this so that you can find space and desire to be together in relationship again. And if she says, well, what if I don't find desire to be in relationship again? You'll say something simple as, well, that wouldn't work for me in relationship. That doesn't work for me, or that wouldn't work for me, period. Be quiet, period. No more talking is all that needs to be said. There's not like, well, then threats or ultimatum or whatever. It doesn't need to be this, that's not going to draw her in. What's going to draw her in is, well, that wouldn't then work for me. That's the edge I see that you are at. And you seem peaceful when we talk about this. You seem peaceful in yourself about it. Is that you? You're smiling. Is that true? Or is there shit underneath the surface that we're not seeing? Yeah.
I feel like I've become more peaceful about it. I think if I would have been on a call like a couple months ago, but I think just having the space, oddly enough, I think part of what I've wanted for so long with my wife is her to be able to like do things for herself and discover herself. And it's almost like I was making things worse by being there for her or something, some pressure or something. And so by me not being there, she can kind of figure things out. I'd also like to think that just things are kind of getting easier on her demanding wise, just because my daughter's not an infant anymore. And I think so things are maybe just kind of a little bit less crazy. But yeah, no, I do feel good about that. One of the books I read recently was it's like was it success and failure, something like there's no
Yeah.
difference between them.
Beyond success and
Yeah,
failure.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
It's about
still reading that.
self-reliance. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been helpful for me. Just sort of looking into that and trying to kind of see like a purpose for myself about sort of choosing how I want to serve kind of the world and people around me versus like it almost idolizing my wife and having her be my god or something. It's sort of,
Yeah,
I could invite her in my things, and I want good things, but my purpose isn't to like make this human happy.
totally.
And I think I was definitely in a sort of dependent mindset, and like, you know, just begging for praise and validation. And so I'm just trying to kind of figure out not external validation and not from that. So
Yeah, that's well said.
yeah, it's
I,
just
I
been,
I call it I call it fasting. You know, we used to hunt for validation outside of ourselves, and now we have to sort of farm it, grow it from within ourselves. So going from no longer hunting to cultivating the fields within our own self takes some time. So there's a time it feels like fasting where we feel more alone and we're not reaching out to her.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, one thing I want to warn you about, and I'll say this to you and every man here, especially guys that are more new, is trying to take things off her plate. Like, oh, our daughter's getting older now, and that's all true, but none of that actually matters. Like, it's not about how difficult or busy things that's not actually what the thing is. So, yeah, I hope that she has more space and time in her life too, but that's not really actually the thing. And you're right, you being around does feel like pressure to her because guys, relationship takes responsibility. There is an inherent responsibility in having a relationship. You have responsibility and she has responsibility. So even being around her when she's wanting to totally feel space and, no responsibilities reminds her that the feeling is I have responsibility with this man to this man. And that's where the pressure comes from, not from you. It's not you doing something, you as a person. It's the setup of relationship does have pressure and responsibility. And that's not a bad thing. Okay. That's just what she's feeling. And she'll blame you, so to speak, for it. But I want every man here to know that that's not actually you. That's just the situation. And she might blame you for it, but that's not her feeling pressure in that way is not something that you can actually take away. It's something that she has to step into, step up and desire. And that's, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, it actually feels like it goes that way for me too. Like whenever I'm in the, come into the house, it feels like I'm responsible now for making a step towards saving my marriage or something. Like it's sort of like, oh, I have a responsibility. And so it kind of even puts me in that space versus sort of being out and just not having that occupy me is sort of something that I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And my hope for you, the two of you, is that she does start to find some more of herself beyond motherhood, and that she does yearn for what she's not getting with you right now, which is closeness and relationship and the heart connection that two of you have had to get together in the first place. Good stuff. Thanks. Good to see you. Absolutely. I'll step into the second bullet point today: how to be peaceful, even if she's upset. Number one, taking time for yourself. What can you control? Number two, if my wife weren't around, what would I do next? He was just saying, I don't live to please this other human. If she weren't here, what would I do for my own self, as we were talking about? And number three, I want you to know it's okay to be facing a difficult chapter of life right now. Often we as guys think if I don't have everything together, if I'm not getting an A plus in all areas of life, that I'm a piece of shit or I'm failing somehow. And that's not true. It's okay to be facing difficult times in life. It's okay to be learning. It's okay to be faced with a new sport. It's okay to be practicing something new. Absolutely. Come on in. How can you relate to this topic? I'm detaching, but my wife's attitude is getting even worse at times. How can you relate to this?
Well, I'm new at this still, the self learning and the detachment of just literally not being around all the time. But at the same time, I really don't think I'm new to it because I think we're slowly detaching for a while, just in our own ways. And I think that was also part of the problem a little bit. But honestly, recently, I keep looking for answers and talking to people and reaching out. And by reaching out to those who I really didn't think could help me, because God, I'm a guy. I don't want to ask for help, right? But here I am talking to some people that in this group that I had no idea even existed the other, 2 months ago. And this group has been great. And I'm okay with asking for help in the right places. And I'm finding the right places. And by finding the right places and then being able to just ask the right questions, I'm realizing that it's going to be okay. But when I'm detaching myself, I'm realizing now that it's not really detaching me from her, it's detaching me from the things that were holding me back from a good marriage.
Well, I'm hearing a hiding from your own self or things that were covered within your own self.
Yeah. So, I mean, just as well as I mean, I was doing a lot of things that were what I thought were helpful and were pushing me through, and they weren't pushing me through. They were hiding things that were holding me back from being the person I really need to be. Case in point, the idea and construct of all the whiskey that I had, like it didn't do anything, and it doesn't do
Your whiskey
anything.
collection, you mean? You tell the guys about your about whiskey collection, yeah.
Yeah. So over the years, I've met a lot of people that had a really extensive amount of whiskey, kind of, the library of whiskey, right? And they all kind of always had a connection to it or a idea of it, and they would have people over and we'd talk about it. And it wasn't just the whiskey; it was the groups, the people, the things, and then I was doing that and thinking, okay, cool. Well, if they're doing that, I wonder if I could like create my own group. Well, then I started to go down that path to create my own group, and no one showed up. Only I showed up, but I kept getting the bottles, and all the bottles just stayed full. But then I was getting more empty, I think, as it went on. And then one day it just hit me. I don't need that. The day that happened, it was like just a big sigh of relief. It was weird. So I was detaching and changing things that all the way through marriage she had been noticing, but because to me it came off as a nag or a not really a help. Like she knew that there was something going on.
Let me jump in and ask you about this. There's actually, so I'm reading a book right now by Carl Rogers, and Carl Rogers is sort of the father of American client-centered therapy back from the
Mm-hmm.
50s and 60s. And I'm reading this old book of his actually again, and I pulled a couple of quotes that I read this morning in my morning routine. I read a bit of a book every day. And I want to ask you about this. I want to ask you about this and other men here because this really hit me. And what you're saying now reminds me of this exactly. He talks about being frightened looking inside himself, feeling afraid of looking deeper within ourselves. And he's referring to talking with a male client, another man. And he said, I didn't realize this is the client speaking. So us talking within our own selves, finding our own selves. He said, I didn't realize that exploring the unknown recesses of myself would make me feel feelings I've never experienced before. It's very strange because, in one way, these aren't new feelings. This is what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying. I sense
Mm-hmm.
that they've always been there, but they seem so bad and disturbing, I've never dared to let them flow in me. And now, as I live these feelings in the hours he's talking about being in therapy here, but talking with another man is the point. As I live these talking with another man, I feel shaky as though my world is falling apart, looking inside of himself, these vulnerable pieces of himself. He said, it used to be sure and firm. Now it's loose, permeable, and vulnerable. It isn't pleasant to feel things I've always been frightened of before. And he says, it's the other man's fault. He's asking me about this. It's other man's fault. Yet I'm curiously eager to see and feel more safe with another guy, talking with another guy about this. So to finish up, it's very disconcerting. It's also sometimes adventurous and exhilarating to be trying to discover who I am. Sometimes I catch myself feeling that perhaps the person I am is worth being, whatever that means. I catch myself feeling that perhaps the person I am, without her validation, without external success, just me, who I
Mm-hmm.
am, is worth being, whatever that means. So,
So
how does that come across to you? This person I am, regardless of anything else, is worth being.
So actually, it kind of ties into the other night at family dinner at her house. So we usually have family dinner one night a week at my parents' house and then her parents' house, and we've done that for a lot of years just because to be help they like to be helpful, and it also takes a little bit off the plate of stress of younger couple, right, with kids. And the other night, I on the way there, I just kept telling myself, "It's gonna be a good dinner. It's gonna be great. You're gonna show up." It's going to be awesome. I showed up. Everybody was pleasant. Everybody was great. We talked about the day. We talked about the previous weekend when we went to the Husker game with the kids. And then at the end of the night, we all said our goodbyes and we left. And I was present. I was there, and it was wonderful. I experienced the moment, didn't think anything of it, didn't overanalyze it, and it was great. And now I was thinking back to my old self, going, wow. Because there was a few times during that I was thinking that I was picking my brain, going, wow. During that conversation, I probably would have done that. During that conversation, I probably would have done that.
Like I would have stuck my foot in my mouth, kind of thing.
Well, I did stick my foot in my mouth that night. Just I stopped myself. Like I just went. I find myself a lot going like this more, and whether it's because I already have the intended reaction, or I just know that I just need to just do like what you said. But instead of doing this, I do this.
Yeah. Probably be weird
It's
if
a,
you just sat there and put your hand over your mouth for the
well,
whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, the other day at work, unintentionally, I have no idea why I even did it, but I did it. I was talking to somebody. I don't even know what it was about. And I wanted to move on and go do something else because I had a task that I was trying to complete. And they were talking to me about something that was kind of bothering me. And I had my opinions and I wanted to keep them to myself because I knew it was going to not be good. So I literally, instead of just in my head go, I went and I walked away right in front of them. And then later that day, they go, "What was that?" I said, "Well, I'm learning how to walk away from things that trigger something I don't want to happen." And I didn't really realize that I actually physically did that in the open. I thought I just did it in my head. So I'm disassociated when she's been detaching herself. I'm now finding it now more that I'm also doing it, but it's not that I'm detaching myself necessarily from her. It's that I'm detaching myself from things that happened or things that I had that I was doing that brought on different experiences. So if I take away the catalyst of what brought on that experience, it's almost like that doesn't come back again.
Yeah,
And
that's well said. So what was the catalyst in the past? Thinking in a
uh,
negative way, expectations. Well, yeah.
well, it was, like I said, the whiskey on the shelf waiting for people to come over, the going to the bar with the empty feeling. Like I was telling you the other day, if I had to choose now and I had a quote unquote bar where all of you were at it, or I had a bar where just the general people that I've known for years are sitting at, I'd choose this bar because I walk away from this bar going, dang, I'd come back like in an hour. But the other one, be like, yeah, I'm just gonna go back because that's what I've been doing. But I come empty and I leave empty, and it doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the
it's a
bar with the
weird deal.
whiskey, the going alone to the bar with the whiskey is not where it's at, right?
Yeah. Now I have one last thing. So last night, yesterday, or shoot, yeah, yesterday, that was supposed to be our 10-year anniversary. And I didn't really, I know it's kind of been a struggle or a thing, and it wasn't really a struggle. It was a great day, actually. And I went about it as two ways. I went about it as it's still a day. I still woke up. I had a great day at work. Had a great day with the kids the previous night. I left work and I went over to her place with just friend gift. Nothing, just hey, cool. Here's some
To
things of
honor the day, to honor your anniversary.
no, not even that. Just to well, kind of that, but also just to honor her. Just to say, hey, here's some stuff that made me think of you, us, whatever. But it had nothing to do with the word marriage or the concept of marriage. It was just like, hey, you're a cool person, or hey,
Sure.
remember this, or this is kind of this was a cool event that happened many years ago, but here's something that relates to that I still remember. And it was kind of just a little bits and pieces. But the one thing that I had bought a long time ago that I had totally kind of forgotten about was this banner. It was a 3-piece banner. And it said, "Holy shit, we've made it 10 years." But I still brought it because we have.
Yeah.
We've made it 10 years. Regardless of what's the title, we're still here. We're still talking. We still got 3 kids. We still got lives. We still got ourselves. So, I mean, I think I'm developing really well. And this course has been great. The own self-awareness of all the stuff I'm doing and reading and writing and that analysis thing, that was really cool. But one last thing, and then I'll let you go on. The
While you're thinking, I
Yeah.
want to say that I honor that you appreciate her as a human and the space between the two of you and your kids. And you're still going to, no matter what happens, you're still going to be a man that wants to do great things in the world. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so I got it. So last night, also just to celebrate me, right? I went on a whim to one of my new favorite places, and it's a country bar. And I know the general manager pretty well just from past worlds. And so I showed up, and I haven't been there in a while just because I've been avoiding places like that because it's not really, it's not part of my routine anymore. But I just wanted to go just for fun, just for a couple of hours after I went to Beetlejuice, by the way. Excellent movie.
The new Beetlejuice.
Yeah, I went all alone by myself just to go and enjoy it. And it was phenomenal.
Nice, nice.
So I went there late at night. It was like 11, showed up, and I went, grabbed a beer, and went over to the window area and I was just being. I was just there. And I was just watching and looking, and caught myself started to sing to the band and just kind of taking it all in, not even
Yeah.
caring what in the hell happened. And then I noticed some people who I liked, whatever, and I was walking around being all squirrel like, talked to a few people, left them, came back, blah blah blah. And then two women noticed me just out of the blue, and they kept staring at me no matter where I was. Finally, I went over to them. I was like, all right, I gotta ask, why do you keep staring at me? Do I
Do
got
I got
something on my
spinach in my teeth or something?
like
Why are you guys
like
staring at me?
do I got like toilet like what's going on? Like everywhere I go, I keep looking, and you guys are both like looking at me. And they go, well, we're trying to figure it out because it seems to me that you bounce and you talk to somebody and you have a great conversation and you're loving life, and then you jump over to another person, you say hi, you say cheers, whatever, you go to the bar, you talk to, and you're just kind of all over, and then you go back over and you're by yourself and you just chill there by yourself. Are you here with anybody? Are you what? I go, honestly, I'm just here. I don't even know that table that I was standing next to. I just said hi. And they go, wow, well, you're a lot more fun than that table was anyway, because we tried to talk to them and they're boring. And I then started dancing with them and talking with them and just chilling with them. And then they said, well, you can hang with us the rest of the night if you want. And then by the end of the night, I got their numbers and they were like, hey, tomorrow at the game, tailgates, let's chill out. And I'm like, okay. And then I left. Told them I had a great night, left, and no expectations, no nothing, just see you.
Man, the way you just lean into having fun in the world, I so appreciate that. I think you've got a lot more extroversion than I do, right? When I go out, I have to kind of put the clothes on if I'm gonna go be social, but you just love leaning into life, it seems.
I was wearing a Lion King shirt yesterday, so the Lion King, and people downtown were kind of like, oh shit, because it was underneath a gray jacket, like a zip up. And people were like, "Oh no, is that a Colorado shirt? Because we're playing Colorado today, and it's a whole big whatever in football." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. This is Lion King." And they're like, "Oh, that's so cool. You're wearing a Lion King shirt."
I don't know how the Lion King shirt relates to Colorado, but I'll just go with it.
The
Yeah.
colors, the gold and the black.
Oh, okay. Got it. The colors. I got it. I got it.
You
I
know,
appreciate you, man. I appreciate you being here. I love your stories. Yeah. I mean, look at this. Just going and two women giving you their number and inviting you over and hanging out and inviting you the next day. It's not difficult to connect with new women, guys. That's a whole other topic for another day. But connecting with new women in this grounded man that you are being, the grounded man that you're learning to become, guys, through this work, being aware of your own self, not dumping your bullshit on anyone else, but going and taking it to the men or taking it to your journaling or your prayer or to the weight room or wherever, whatever you do, and go work your shit out otherwise, learning your daily routine. All this is to raise your energy as a man, to raise your openness and your leadership. And that's what I see doing. Really great stuff. Awesome. I actually want to bounce over. How's this topic today relate to you?
I am more of the one that's pulling away in a relationship. And so this wasn't dumped on me like it seems like a lot of guys in the group are. Been married 29 years, sexless for probably the last 5. There's not the I want space, cattiness, bitter, ugly fighting. There's none of that. There's just, it feels like you're just using me for a tool for sex. And so therefore, anytime I would try to pursue her to have intimacy, she would create tension and then we would fight.
So she said that you just know.
Well, yes, she has said that. But before I got her to say that, anytime I would try to woo her or whatever, instead of being in charge of the intimacy and saying, hey, get ready Saturday night, we're going out and then we're going to fuck. It was, trying to, whatever she'll let me get away with type thing and escalate it. And if I would hint towards that, then she would find some way for us to fight.
Sure.
And, if she would consent, then it'd be starfish. She's got some back and hip issues. And so she's definitely not interested. It would be painful. And so therefore, definitely not fun for me.
Right.
And several years ago, I just pretty much said to myself, I'm never giving you this power over me again. I will never come to you for sex again. I'll just take care of my own needs. And been living that way for a while, and I've got to a point to where I'm not that way anymore. And so I have not told her, I guess, bluntly enough, but I've pretty much said, hey, I'm not going to live the next 20 years in a sexless marriage. And so I hope you'll join me in that.
Yeah, so let me ask you about that. Thank you. I appreciate that. I have a quick, let's say, 1 minute story. Another man I've been working with for about 3 years. They were in your spot, and brief story. He said, I care for you, but I no longer want to do certain things together with you, like go on vacation with you. They would cross country in their RV, things like that. I'd love to do that as lovers and as a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, but I don't want to just do that as friends. So he started to step back. And of course, she was angry and all you want is sex and you're trying to manipulate me and all this. And it's like, no, I want you to desire me. I'm just being honest with you that I don't want to do cross country trips with just a friend. I want to do that with my partner and things like this. Then that was about a year and a half of a phase like that. Then she started joining him on her own accord. She started joining him in the shower. Hey, can I join you in the shower? And she'd take care of him, so to speak, right? Touch him, finish him off, this kind of thing. And long story short, but she's never wanted to move beyond that. It's almost like that's as far as she either desired or felt like she could go or all this. So now point being, he's facing a situation like yours. They've been married over 30 years. She's very adamant. I don't want sex. I don't ever want sex again. She might even say sometimes. And he's facing the spot of, okay, now I either live a sexless marriage the rest of my life and don't feel openness and closeness in that way because he also doesn't feel close to her. And so it's, well, do I have to be the one to break up the marriage now? What are our two grown boys going to think if dad leaves? Why? Because he's not getting sex. It just sounds so hard and it sounds so painful. But yet it's this whole piece of yourself, of ourselves, that feels dead inside if we just shut that off or become a monk the rest of our life. It's not what he wants. It sounds like it's not what you want. So where are you now in that journey?
Same kind of thing. We'll take vacations together and stuff because I live with a roommate. We get along fine, but there's no passion. She's gained 70 pounds. She can't get around. I'm a very active person. We just aren't really interested in the same thing. So I'm not interested in going on trips with her. And so I'm to a point to where real love, love it and leave it, or stay and hate it. Stay and love it. And so is sex and connection that important that I'm willing to give up everything else that's comfortable? We've got a great house I built with my own hands on 60 acres. We don't have any conflict in our life. Close to my son and his wife and grandchild. Do I disrupt all of that to get laid on a regular basis? Do I just simply state to her, again, I'm not in a position to ask, hey, if we're going to continue this, I'm going to get sex and intimacy elsewhere. And you can either be all right with that or you're not. That's your choice. And I'm trying to come to terms with that. And is that important enough to give up everything that we had together? I'm still feeling my way through that.
Absolutely.
I've been in this process for a month and a half, maybe 2 months. And so I've come a long way in a short period of time, but I ain't there yet.
Yeah, certainly. Right. And I appreciate you being honest with us and open with us about that. And what a difficult situation to be in that you never thought, right? You never thought you'd be facing something like
Yeah.
this.
And I've got a grown son, and that's the same thing. And I have shared a little with him all the details, and he's, very religious, and marriage is forever. There's no reason to ever get a divorce. And the book I haven't got to yet, but it's on the list, is Necessary Endings, and so we'll see where this goes. And so
Yeah.
that's where I am, and trying to figure out what my future is going to look like. It's not going to look like the last 5 years. So I'm trying to, what are my nets? And so what are my negotiable and non-negotiable terms? And so I'm getting closer to clarity on that. I know what I'm not willing to put up with, but what am I willing to sacrifice for that is still a point of question for me.
Yeah, good for you. I appreciate the journey you're on. You can only answer those questions for your own self over time, and you're neck deep in discovering what you want. I appreciate that. It's good to see you in the chat. I've definitely tried again and again to get to a I don't need physical intimacy state of mind and failed to get that for myself. I'm not sure I won't try again. Well, yeah, if you want to be a monk, right? There's some men that decide to be a monk and don't want that as a part of their life any longer, and they want to focus on their own spiritual life or whatever it may be. And you want to kind of put all the rest of that to the side. That needs to be a choice. But when you're sort of forced by the situation of your wife no longer wanting, well, okay, we didn't have full choice or control over that. So there's a phase of, all right, I honor the relationship and I'm willing to have patience and seek professional help and do this work for my own self and learn about my own self for a period of time. But do I want to never have intimacy with a woman again? Do I never want to have a woman smile and moan for me the way that a woman might do during intimacy? Do I never again want to feel in my body and like I am when it's during the depths of intimacy? Do I never want to grow in a way that I never could myself with a woman in relationship? Do I just want to put all that to the side for the rest of this life anyway? That's such a painful question that another person is forcing us to ask our own self. And yet that's the crucible of masculinity during this time. And that's what we're all here for, is to learn and grow through that. No man here live or no man watching this is turning away from that. You're facing that. You're welcoming it with a deep breath. And I appreciate that about you guys. I'll share a piece of an email that a client sent me this week about this work in particular, about how he's doing what we're talking about today, how to be peaceful even if she's upset, how to uphold this desire of his to want intimacy, but yet to be patient and clear during this time. And he wrote, I could tell something was off, and she was holding a lot of anxiety inside by her body language. Unprompted, I started rubbing her shoulders, and the fucking dam broke with her emotions. Turns out, a few of the moments I recently have been laughing with friends gave her a glimpse into paranoia about me continuing on with my life while she feels like she's struggling. This was followed by the realization that I've been living that for months. So he, as a man, has been living in paranoia, but he's no longer now with my work with him, with this work together. And so she's seeing him happy, basically. She's seeing him laughing with friends and happy, healing and leading his own life. And that gave her this dam of emotions, this incredible emotions. He goes on, hence why her emotions came bursting out. Well, I wanted to say, yeah, I've been paranoid and now she's feeling it. Yeah, I've been experiencing this. Instead of that, he said, I knew that was not a teaching moment with her and I just let her have her feelings. It's a long narrative, but this was followed the next day by my wife expressing a deep appreciation about my listening and genuine curiosity with her. I'm more proud of myself for showing up this way, but really noticed that I was able to show up and not have it impact my day or my mood. So not just was he able to be curious and not lash out at her, so to speak, or put it back on her, that it didn't affect him. It didn't affect his day or his mood when she went through this. And these are the phases of this work, the phases of this coaching. At first, at least for me, when I started to do this work, at first we're completely lost in resentfulness and how could she disrespect me in this way? And I'm left alone now and I'm just here to pick up the pieces and how could she do this? crying in the bathroom at work, as I've told a few guys at the time when I was going through this. My whole life is collapsing. Going from that to, okay, I can take care of myself. I'm not relying on her. I'm faking it till I make it. It's a new learning that I'm doing. I'm taking space away from her so I can like actually not collapse on the inside. And then learning, I have all of this aliveness in me that has nothing to do with her. And if I keep myself away from in the moment her blaming me or her saying this is all my fault, if I back away from that, I actually have value in this world, and people at work and my friends and all these other women that I started to be around, they really value me and I value myself. And then ultimately, my now ex-wife, this is a long time ago now, a decade ago, she then came back and wanted me again. And we started dating again. And that's a whole other story. And I decided ultimately not to be together with her because what I wanted was to keep growing. I wanted to keep learning more about each other and blooming relationship. And that's not what she actually wanted. In my case, she wanted what she didn't want to lose what we had. It's not that she wanted to grow forward. She didn't want to lose what we had in the past. And I don't know what she found when she was out there single, but apparently that's not what she thought it was going to be. That's a whole other story for another time. But this man, things have turned around. She's stepping toward him. They're having physical intimacy again. And this woman is actually appreciating him. She's actually appreciating the work that he's doing and the energy that he's putting forth. And that takes some time. So our last bullet point of today of why is this likely a phase? Well, either it's a phase where she's going to keep moving away from you and be single and live her life otherwise. And so in that way, it's a phase, or it's a phase that you are going to act differently than you have in the past. You're not going to be the nice guy any longer. And then the behavior will go away ultimately. So let's talk about that for a second. This is going to be a bit of research, but we'll move through this quickly in our last couple of minutes here. So what's an example of behavioral extinction? How is she going to treat me differently? Well, when the mother stopped buying candy for the child when he screamed, the reinforcer was removed. And after a while, the child stopped the behavior and no longer screamed during checkout. Extinction was demonstrated when the behavior, the screaming, discontinued. Well, the mom has to stop buying him candy. You have to stop rewarding the bad behavior. So part of what we do here is learn to not reward her bad behavior any longer, not to explode or cause drama, not to play into the old dynamics any longer. The process of reducing or eliminating a learned behavior by withholding the reinforcing consequence. Oh, yeah. So in other words, we have to stop being the nice guy that just panders to her and tries to make her happy no matter what. And how to do that is what you're learning here. When to do that depends on your situation. But extinction, the factors that may influence extinction. A number of factors can influence how resistant a behavior is to extinction. The strength of the original conditioning can play an important role. The longer the conditioning has taken place and the magnitude of the conditioned response may make the response more resistant. Okay, so all this to say, the longer that we were acting badly in the past, the longer it's going to take for her to realize we don't want to play that same game any longer. And we need to be consistent in this. And often I say, give it a good year for every decade that you've been together. Most men, we think, okay, in 30 days or in a couple of months, this should all be. No, it takes about a year for every decade that you've been together to feel consistent within yourself, to feel on a new path, and for her to really have the chance to see if she's going to turn around. And I know your life and your marriage and your family is worth that. An example, he says, imagine that a researcher has trained a lab rat. So if you were the researcher and you acted like a nice guy, or if you made mistakes in the past and you started to train her in a way to treat you badly or to treat the relationship badly, he says the researcher has trained a lab rat to press a key to receive a food pellet. What happens if the researcher stops delivering the food? What happens if you stop doing those old bad behaviors? The extinction will not occur immediately, but it will after a time. If the rat continues to press the key but does not get the pellet, the behavior will eventually dwindle until it disappears entirely. And now she's not a lab rat, don't get me wrong, okay? She's not Pavlov's dog. But what my point is here is we've acted a certain way in the past. And I know you're here to take responsibility for the ways you've acted in the past. And that's why you read No More Mr. Nice Guy. That's why you read Hold On to Your Nuts. so you can learn the things and the bad ways you've acted in the past, and you can no longer do those, and ultimately come out the other side that what you want, is worth fighting for within you. She may not want to join you, or she may. But no matter what, you know that loving and being loved is an art. This is what I believe. This is what I practice. And this is what I teach every day, that loving and being loved, both of those things, loving and being loved, is an art. And I appreciate you guys being here for this. So reach out to me. Check out my stuff if you like. Great Men Move Mountains. My email is jeff@greatmenmovemountains.com. It's great to see you guys. Have a good weekend. See you next time, guys.